Hello, welcome to Insights, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odiko.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
This episode will throw up issues around transparency and accountability in government and how the federal government, vis-a-vis the Tinubu administration, hopes to foster public participation in governance by boosting the ability and capacity of citizens to track the progress of government ministries, departments, and agencies. We'll also appraise how the press operates in the midst of competing interests and setting statutory limitations to press freedom, even within a democracy. Elizabeth is here and she's ready with the concluding part of the conversation she had last time on digital literacy in Nigeria. Elizabeth?
Yes, of course, we'll conclude our conversation on digital literacy. And we hear the government is doing so much to increase the number of persons that are literate in this area. So we'll conclude by learning more from our guest.
Very well then, let's kickstart the conversation.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Well, now, my first conversation will center on the general principles and workings of the Citizen Delivery Tracker, a mobile application unveiled by the Office of the Special Advisor to the President on Policy and Coordination and head of the Central Coordinating Delivery Unit. It's called the CDCU unit. It's headed by Adiza Usman. These mobile applications essentially allow citizens to track the activities and performance of ministries and government agencies using their deliverables and key performance indicators, that's the KPIs. The aim is to build public trust in the government and promote transparency and accountability at all levels with the delivery trackers. Let me bring in my guest at this point, Hamza Aliu, who joins us via Zoom from Lokoja, Kogi State. He is the Executive Director, Initiative for Grassroots Advancement, INGRA. And of course, he's one of our regular analysts here on Insights. Hamza will be appraising the Citizens Delivery Tracker from the civil society perspective and sharing some of his thoughts with us here on the program. Welcome to Insight, Hamza. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me, Nnamdi.
Great. I think we should begin with the general principle of having a mobile application for tracking government's progress and how that could, very well engender public participation in governance. Isn't that a laudable step, even now? I mean, seeing how it is that government is pushing, that conversation to encourage reflection on the strength and weaknesses of the country's accountability system. Shouldn't we be clapping for government?
You're very correct, Nnamdi. It's on principle. It shows that the government has an understanding of what participation and engagement and what inclusive governance is all about, that governance cannot be sustainable if there is no participation and engagement of the citizens who are the beneficiaries of the service provided. And so, on the surface of it, we're very happy about it. It's a laudable drive, and it's something that we should use going forward if we're going to get that kind of inclusion that we want in terms of citizens' feedback from government interventions. And so when we looked at it, we saw that, yes, even though we know it was a civil society-led and civil society-driven action or intervention, but it showed clearly that our government wanted to engage citizens in their, especially monitoring of projects. We were very particular about it should be more about, it should be also include planning of the project. But of course, they say half bread is better than whatever have in Nigeria. So we are taking it the way it is, and we say we're happy about it. We want government to continue on this line. It shows clearly that the government is listening to citizens. It's also showing clearly that the government is also aligning with the SDGs, with the all the international instruments we use in monitoring inclusive governance and sustainable governance. So yes, we will say it's a laudable project and a laudable movement by the government.
So when you say you would have preferred or you would have loved the approach where the people are also part of the decision-making process, does that mean you're indecisive, or rather, should I say, does that mean you're decisive on government's approach in getting input from the people in the first place, especially as it concerns these target sets for the MDAs this time around? Of course, we know that certain measures and structures have been used over time to garner public input. But the question that have often remained is whether they truly reflect or have reflected the wishes and needs of the people. I'm sure you noticed how it is that, these deliverables and KPIs indicated in the targets for these MDAs were arrived at after 6 weeks. 6 weeks of bilateral sections with development partners, consultants, and even technical teams from the various MDAs. You yourself have acknowledged that it seems to be a product of civil society contribution. So, firstly, I have two questions for you. Firstly, doesn't the fact that governments incorporated, technical teams, development partners, and even the civil society, doesn't that reflect government's acknowledgement of communication as an effective tool for social mobilization? And secondly, very quickly, while you're answering that, how can target setting for MDAs be structured in a manner that ultimately makes the people part of the government decision processes from the beginning, from the onset, that is?
So I love the two questions. Let me take the last question first. What we want to see and what is the SOP, the standard operating procedure for inclusive governance is that from the planning stage, like you said, people should be included. Now, of course, like I said, we're not included in this planning stage. The 8-point priorities of the government was President Bola Tinubu's 8-point agenda. It's not what citizens want. It's what
I see that is what you mean now. You mean government's manifesto in the first place and not the target set for MDAs.
The tracker was set from the manifesto of this administration. And so it means that the indicators and the indicators we are tracking are targeted at the manifesto of the present administration, the 8 of them. And so it's listed in the Citizens Delivery Tracker. And so that's why we're saying we're not included in it, even though we know that it's emanated from a political consultation at the political level during their campaigns, which means that citizens were also part of that campaign itself. But it was never interrogated in the sense that it emanated from the bottom-up approach. Rather, it was a top-bottom approach. That's why we're saying, yes, it's half bread is better than none. We are now being asked to track activities and interventions that have already been put in place by this present administration. And so we are only going to give them a feedback based on what they have sent to us down there using the tracker, using the app itself. We cannot say that this is what we actually wanted. So that is where I'm coming from that part of it. The other part of it is that, yes, we acknowledge that, yes, it is a good process he has put in place to get feedback from citizens on issues around the MDAs. How are they performing? What are they doing? It will aid him in making decisions on who is performing well and who is not performing well. But that doesn't mean that it is what we want. If they ask citizens what we wanted, we will have listed what we wanted, and some of them are not in the 8-point agenda of the administration. Of course, you know what citizens are looking for, our bread and butter issues. We're not seeing them on those priorities that he's mentioning. And so that's why we're saying it's a good step. Moving forward, once we move this conversation forward and establish a culture of feedback from citizens, we'll begin to ask, how do we get citizens' input into the planning session, whether it is from manifesto or whether it is on national planning issues?
But Amzad, that's the question I put forward to you. I said I had a 2-part question for you when I asked if you think, this is an acknowledgement, of communication as an imperative for the development process. If you think government is acknowledging that, yes, we do need to link up with the people in terms of setting targets or development targets for our society, for our communities. But now you're saying, and I get what you mean exactly, when you say maybe at the party level, at the political level, even maybe at the stage of campaigns, candidates and aspirants need to get input in setting targets for society. Is that perhaps or what you're talking about? But then, and I'll throw this back at you again and say, how can these inputs at that point now be gotten from citizens so that it can form a part of the manifesto of political parties, of candidates aspiring for positions or elected positions?
Yes, the idea that you need to communicate to people that you are leading is very crucial. It's part of every international, national, even subnational instrument that we use in gauging what good governance is all about. People must make inputs into what your manifesto is, whether it's at national level, at state level, even at political level. You must get the people's input into it. So we're happy that this government appreciates that and is working with that. And so it's something that we need to encourage going forward. Other governments have tried it, and this particular government is building on it. And so it's a good thing for us. We are beginning to make baby steps in terms of inclusive governance. What we are saying is that if manifestos are the point at which are the document from which governments derive their priority areas from, which is naturally is a good thing because that's what they campaigned on. We are happy that the government has understood and accepted the fact that there needs to be communication between citizens and those they are elected in governance, and that this kind of feedback needs to be used going forward when it comes to national issues, and that these manifestos, despite the fact that we did not see those areas around consultation with party members, because party members are also citizens, they need to buy into this idea. And we didn't see that coming out. Probably it happened in the party level. I'm not a member of the party. So maybe it happened at that level, but we didn't see it in the media that this is how they came about this manifesto. But that said, it is also a knowledge to us that we know that this manifesto was what they used in campaigning. And so obviously, this is what they use in getting the votes of the people to buy into it. And so we're hoping that going forward, we need to see more of this. We need to have visibility on more of these consultations when it comes to citizens inclusion and involvement in the planning of getting this manifesto. But like I said, we are happy that it's baby steps, and we are happy that the governments begin to realize that people should be engaged when they're doing their tracking their interventions and services they provide.
I hear you. I hear you, and I hear you loud. And I get that, look, we need to build this culture of transparency, of accountability. And that is exactly what the citizen delivery tracker is all about. And you talk about baby steps. You've talked about these priority areas. I'd like for us to go through them a bit and see. We're talking about there are a couple of them that have been outlined there. Let me see. There's the economy leads, and then there's national security, which follows. There's agric, there's energy, there's infrastructure and transportation, as well as education. There's health, social investment. Of course, it also says here that the citizens can track these KPIs and efforts of governments at diversification, digitization, the Creative Act, manufacturing, and innovation as well. I mean, how impressive is all of that? And does it impress you enough as civil society to say that we have learned from past mistakes and that this current process is perhaps building on that to genuinely allow for a situation where citizens can utilize, say, maybe the freedom of information law to query, perhaps even the data being presented on that link provided by CDCU?
Well, when you say we're being impressed, I don't know how you can impress Nigerians. We're difficult to impress. But like I said, we are happy that a government seems to want citizens to make input into how it carries out its service or its interventions and help it to link back into planning of subsequent interventions. And so it's a good thing. We're happy about it. But like we always say that this particular instrument or this particular app is targeted at a particular demography of Nigerians. Young, educated, ICT proficient,
So
fine.
you would have
But
you
they
would have
don't
you
make
would
the
have
majority
you
of-
you'd have expected a different approach, perhaps, that integrates
Yes.
other sectors of Nigerians. Can you talk about that a
Exactly.
bit?
So there are a lot of other non-formal ways governments can interact with their people. For instance, we know that the legislature has their constituency meetings that is embedded in their constitutional duties that they perform. And we know that the political party that the president represents has the majority in the National Assembly. So what stops the president if these particular 8 priority areas are what is acceptable in his party? Why not ask his party members to use it as issues when they go down to their constituency meetings, to be able to say, people, those who are not educated, because this app is only for those who are educated. I can read and write, I know how to download and upload, buy data, all those ones. Those are issues that are elitist, if you ask me. But it is aimed at a certain demographic of citizens. The larger majority of us are not online. Larger majority of us are not educated, and they have to play their part in this feedback mechanism that the government is looking at. So we need to have more of such non-formal strategies we use in engaging our citizens. Yes, it's a wonderful tool. It's easy to download. It's easy. The user interface is simple. The feedback mechanism is easy. All I have to do is look at a particular project and type in my feedback. My location will be included in it. So it's beautiful, but it does not address the concerns of the larger majority of Nigerians who are not in this particular demography. And maybe the government has other strategies it's planning to use. But I know that the president has a personal assistant on constituency matters, and the person is going around states to have constituency meetings. But these particular priorities should form the core of those meetings that they're going to hold, and they should have more of those meetings when they go down, because really our problems are not really at the urban areas. Our problems are actually at the community and rural areas, where our brothers at that particular end of the country have peculiar problems that are different from our own. We may have issues of light. They over there at the community level, light may not be an issue. So it's important that when we develop apps like this, we should also look at the broader application of this app. How can other groups who are not part of the demography we're targeting, how can they benefit? Do we have strategies for them to benefit? So I think going forward, like I said, we're happy about it. But yes, it means that we're going to ask for more, like Oliver Twist. We're going to ask the government to expand their scope of this particular feedback mechanism that they've produced.
Of course, they'll always be asking for more. And I like how you've acknowledged that we are where we are right now. And I think, having gotten to where we are right now, we should take advantage of that. And I guess in talking about that, even for those who can access the link or the website and access this platform, it still goes back to the point of how involved the citizens will be or should be ordinarily if this is to be effective as a public governance tool. So let me ask you, to what extent can citizens, those with access, actively take charge of this tracker initiative and perhaps drive the process to ensure that public policies and programs are implemented, and not just effectively, but efficiently as well?
Citizens' engagement in governance is predicated on an assumption that citizens are capacitated enough and willing enough to engage the system. When we mean capacitated, they have enough skills and competence, knowledge to be able to want to engage. And willingness means that they are patriotic enough. We have developed the zeal in them to say, I am part of this government. Government is me and everyone else, and so I should give my own, make my own input into governance. This is where government institutions such as the Ministry of Education, through our education system, our education policies, and also the National Orientation Agency needs to be more proactive in building this capacity and this willingness on the citizens' part to engage the system. Because like you said, as beautiful as this app is, if you do not actually download it, open it, look at it, make feedback and send, it will not work. It won't be of benefit to anybody.
True.
So we need to have that willingness to do it. And that is what we are lacking right now within the citizenship. There's a lot of distrust for government, a lot of disenchantment by government, a lot of like a cynical attitude by citizens to say there's this distance between it is their own versus it is our own. Government doesn't seem to be close to citizens anymore. And so citizens feel that whatever I do will not make a difference. We need to build that orientation that this Nigeria, this government belongs to us, and if it's going to work, we need to participate at our own different levels. And one of the means of participating is we need to give feedback to government concerning projects and interventions we're seeing in our communities. Another thing, I'm looking at this app, it does not state exactly what those projects are, where they are located, and so that citizens that are based in those areas will be able to give feedback. It gives you a generalized project definition. And so I'll be looking out for those projects when I go to my communities. But it should be based on what is in the budget. The budget should say we're going to dig 20 boreholes in this community in Kogi State. So that me that live in Kogi State will pick up that particular project and follow it up and be able to give input to say, I know what is happening in this project. It is at this stage. I'll take pictures and I'll send. Also, it should be able to tell us how much has been forwarded to these projects, how much has been released for this project, so that we'll know when the project implementers are not doing well, so that citizens will not raise false alarm without knowing where exactly the problem is. And so I'm hoping that going forward, I know they are working on the app itself. Going forward, they're able to redesign the app to also incorporate some of these issues for us.
Actually, this is an upgraded version. Remember, there was an earlier version that was uploaded, or rather unveiled a couple of I think like 2 months ago, but of course, an upgraded version was unveiled April 8th, and that is the current version that we have now. In rounding off our conversation, and you've talked so much about participation and the imperatives for citizens to be part of this process, I wonder what your thoughts are on if there's perhaps a role here for whistleblowing and how that can be incorporated as a mechanism also for tracking the performance of MDAs, on this tracker platform. Wouldn't that be a plus, perhaps, to the workings of the platform, where Nigerians can also monitor some of these complaints and probably get, updates or updated on government's response to some of these, to the complaints, perhaps maybe from whistleblowers, This, of course, let's not forget that there's also the need for strengthening of the laws around the whistleblower policy, of course.
Yes, I perfectly agree with you, and that's why we're saying that the app itself needs to be integrated with the budget, the government budget of the day, to say this project, this is the cost, this is how much has been released, and this is how far we think the project should go with this amount of money we have released, so that when citizens begin to track those interventions or those projects, they will be able to say, I went to this project area. Budget is doing it with their tracker app, their tracker application that they're using. We're hoping that they're going to integrate these two into this government one, to say that this is how much has been released for this project. This is where the project is located. And citizens can now go to those project areas, people who live there, take pictures, raise issues concerning what is the status of the implementation of that project at that particular time. And so it's like, I know that you said that it's an upgraded, of course.
Yes.
I'm saying that it's application 1.4, which means that this is the 4th upgrade. So it's important that they also take this feedback in, upgrade it further to include the financial component of the budget and the location of these projects, so that citizens will be effectively able to go to those places and be able to say, this is what I'm seeing on ground. And the whistleblowing team means that immediately I see the financial component of the project and how much has been released to the implementer, all I have to do is to take pictures of that particular project and say, this is the stage I'm seeing it in, this should not be the stage it should be in. Based on the amount of money that the government has said they've released to this project, this is what it should be. And again, you made mention of the legal framework around protecting the whistleblowing policy of government. It is still is something that we need to improve on, because it does not protect, it doesn't adequately give me that sense of protection if I raise issues concerning accountability and transparency, and at the end of the day, I am made to bear the brunt of that issue when I bring it out to government.
So that's also an area that of course needs to be worked on.
They got their hands burnt doing it. So I think it's something that is good for further conversation as we go forward.
Hamza Liu, I'd like to thank you so much for being part of this conversation. But just before I let you go, I'd like to inform our viewers that the tracker platform is currently available as a web link on the CDCU website. And of course, it will soon be uploaded, or rather it will soon be available for downloads on mobile devices. I'd like to thank you so much, Hamza Liu, for sharing your thoughts with us on this issue. Of course, from the civil society perspective, Hamza Liu is the Executive Director, Initiative for Grassroots Advancements, INGRA. Thank you so much indeed for coming on our program.
Thank you very much, Nnamdi, for having me again.